Aging Matters on BCTV is supported by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging.
Hi, and welcome to Aging Matters. This is a program that is provided by and sponsored by the Berks County Area Agency on Aging. My name is Ann Barlet, and I'm the Public Advocacy and Outreach Manager for the agency. We have an exciting topic this evening, and without further ado, I'd like to introduce my guest with me. This is Kyle Tevlin, and you are a volunteer with the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Pennsylvania. Welcome and thank you.
Thank you.
We were talking earlier, and I'm like, I have a slew of summer not so fun topics like funerals, but I think that it is extremely important that we educate ourselves because unfortunately death is inevitable, and part of that is memorials and funeral arrangements and planning. And I think if we can ease into that topic tonight, it might help those of us who are not thought about it to start thinking about it, those who might be planning to give them some direction, guidance, and I think with your group it's very helpful to get this information. So what I'd really first like to start with, Kyle, is if you would quickly tell us about the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Pennsylvania.
Sure. It's a local chapter of a national organization, the Funeral Consumers Alliance. The headquarters happens to be in New Hampshire, but since most funeral rules go by state, almost every state has their own affiliate.
Okay.
And it really started out of trying to get funeral talk and death talk out of the dark ages so that people are able to talk about it, because one of the reasons that it's also sort of mysterious is that we don't let ourselves talk about it. It's so taboo. So we're all about, let's just bring it out in the open. It's a huge expense. It's one of the biggest expenses in our whole lives. Why are we not talking about it like it's kind of normal the way it is? So we are a nonprofit, all volunteer run, and mostly we're about education. It's I would say our main message, if there's only one thing we could tell people, it's that you need to shop around, because the range of price differences in funeral homes varies by the thousands of dollars, and people don't realize that. Like, for the exact same service could be, just for example, $750 at one funeral home, and a funeral home across the street, it could be $3,600.
Wow.
So there's no reason to not shop around.
I like earlier. I liked, we had our conversation earlier, and we talked about this topic as being familiar in that we all have attended funerals. We all, many have been part of planning for funeral and memorial arrangements and the intricacies of that, but also then the mysterious part of, but it's there. And so I think this is great by bringing us together to start at least the conversation, the education, and so I like what you said as far as shop around. We shop around for everything else, don't we? We shop around for the best price of bread, or my discounts on, when you go shopping to buy something, what are the discounts, the percents off, the coupons.
Right.
But as you said, and I think we don't think even the cost of what funerals could be,
right,
and therefore it could be anything from here, really here, for costs involved. And so let's talk about You mentioned prices vary from funeral home to funeral home. So what you tell me the best way to begin as far as, do we want to talk about the pricing of things or the things that we're looking for first, like the options,
Right.
the burials, whether it's in ground or cremation?
There's so many options.
Yeah.
There are so many options, but I think the best thing that anybody can do is mostly do it in advance. Don't wait to the last minute, because when you wait to the last minute, then you're making your decision emotionally, and you are so vulnerable. That's when you're not going to make the best decisions. And, funeral homes, not to throw any of them under the bus, but they're a business. They don't make
absolutely.
money if you don't buy stuff.
Absolutely.
Which doesn't make them bad people. It's just you have to be aware of that.
Well, and I think as consumers, we can fall into all kinds of things. I've had people call us on other things where they've seen advertisements on TV for other things, and that's what they see, so that's what they think is out there. And so likewise, wherever we are, that might be our only thought as to the only option, whether it's the particular home or the particular type of burial. So I think the awareness of such a variety too.
Right, and nobody would go out and buy a car with just walk onto a lot and buy a car. Like, you always shop around. Well, this is the same kind of purchase. It's that big of a thing. So I feel like it's helpful to think, like, get in the mindset of, like, this is a really big purchase. I'm not going to make this sort of ignorantly, and then just treat it like I'm getting estimates,
Yep,
and you pick
absolutely.
up the phone, you call 3 funeral homes, maybe. Often people have one that their family has used or their
Right,
neighbors
exactly.
they're familiar with. But one thing I feel like people don't realize, that now a lot of corporations are buying up family funeral homes, and they don't change the name.
Okay.
So people think it's still run by Mr. Nice,
my
Joe
next door
Smith.
neighbor down the street. Yeah.
And somebody in the family might still be involved, but it's a corporate-run funeral home now. Different pricing, whole different scenario. So there's no harm in just saying, I'm going to call 3 different places. And I did this for myself, just because, like, take your own advice. And I was shocked how much information you could get by calling somebody ahead of time, just like personality-wise.
Well, let me ask you, so if I did that though, will they openly give somebody, even if I ask for like a list of things, if I, let's talk about burials in the with a plot, in the ground that I'm going to lower a casket. So we know, even with colors and types of caskets, if I were to ask for a copy of something,
They are required
Okay.
by law to give you prices over the phone.
Okay.
Many of them don't like to do this. I think we've probably all had this, and I think this is why people are afraid to call ahead, because if you've ever done that before, they want, like, well, just come in. It would be so much
Yes,
better.
exactly. I
Which
can
is
show
fine,
you.
but it's a sales tactic. There's no reason.
Okay.
So they are required by law to give you the prices over the phone.
Okay.
So this is where we're the Consumers Alliance. We educate consumers. To be a good consumer, you have to be able to say, when they give you a hard time, just come right out and say, it's my legal right to have this information, or I know you're required by law. And they all know it, so it's not like they can talk themselves
Sure.
out of it. Once you call them on it, they're going to have to give you the prices. And if you walk in the door, they're required to give you that price list right away,
Okay.
before they show you anything or start talking about options, and people don't realize that. I'm just going to throw out a couple of
go
things
ahead.
here that are helpful to people that few people realize, which is that you have to get that general price list, and that's what it's called in every funeral home.
Okay,
The general
general
price list.
And then there's no doubt add-ons.
Well, right, and they're on that list.
Okay.
But I feel like if just knowing that term gives you some power, because then they realize you know what you're talking about. There's such a thing as
The
a general price list.
Okay.
You are not required to buy your casket or urn at that funeral home. You can buy one anywhere you want. You can buy it at Costco. You can buy it online. You can
Okay.
make your own, and they can't charge you extra, give you a hard time, anything.
Because you didn't buy it there,
Right.
as it were.
You can buy it at the funeral home across the street.
and have it, and then go with another
Right.
funeral home for the other parts of.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And again, they know that,
Okay.
but people don't realize that because
Right.
caskets is one of the highest costs of this. And there's no reason to just have to spend several $1,000s because that's all that they've got to show you. Especially if it's something that doesn't mean anything to you. If you don't need a fancy casket, literally go to Walmart, go online. They all have 24-hour overnight delivery.
Oh my. Okay.
And like people laugh, like this is a joke, but
Alrighty.
it's totally true. And this is how people can save money.
Okay. Yes.
By realizing that they have the right to do that.
Okay.
Same with the urn. You don't have to buy a fancy urn there. You could use your cookie jar at home.
Okay.
Totally acceptable. Anything that will hold something is a good enough container. And often, some of the most meaningful things you can use at a funeral are things you might have already had.
Yes, exactly.
You know, personalize
that
it.
is exactly personalized, important, related to the person, the family.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
And I think I think one of the things I'm concerned about is getting mired in those options and some additional expenses. And we haven't even talked about the comparison of the types of, you know, burials and the urn. You know, we talked, you know, I keep going back to the plot, but that could be a casket, but it also could be the urn that I have can go there, but the urn can go somewhere else. But so there's varieties of burials, right?
Yeah.
That you can compare.
Right.
But also then prices, additional prices or costs of the whole arrangement, the whole funeral
There's many-
arrangement
right.
that goes part of that. So is that, so again, now common thinking, if it, you know, people have the little memorial card,
right,
you know,
right.
the little thing, the flowers, the music that's playing, you know, are there, I guess we should, when I said music, I thought very much of our family discussions about music that we like and things that we are actually noting, you know, my sister and I as to what music we each like and totally different. So, you know, do you have that as an option? You know, even things like that, are they
Sure,
options?
anything that you want to write down to make it your own, that's a good thing to start planning in advance, and then you can give that to a funeral director if you plan in advance with somebody in particular.
And would it be something that I would, so I have to, do I have to ask them, again, as I'm planning in advance, all of those things, like will they accept my special music,
Yes.
as strange as the music
Yes.
may be?
Yes.
Or do you think they're going to say, well, no, this is the typical type of music that
Well,
we play here, and that's all we are willing
There
to play?
are probably funeral homes that kind of prefer people do it their way.
Okay.
But it's funny right now in the industry. They're so set in their ways, and they're actually in a complete upheaval right now because things are changing so much, and they are so slow to change. But they are starting to realize that they have to cater to people's wishes rather than tell people how this is the way your funeral's going to be,
Okay.
which is how it's always been.
Okay.
So I think most funeral homes now would, you know, if you want to bring your own music, bring your own music.
Okay.
I mean, there's things now, people, they're doing all sort of funny things. Like I was reading, somebody wanted like a beach scene set up.
Okay.
And literally the funeral parlor let the what do you call it, the viewing room or whatever it is, they brought in sand, they brought in, you know, folding
Beach
chairs
chairs.
and beach balls, you know.
Okay.
They'll do stuff like that now because things are changing.
But it's, again, a good thing to educate ourselves, to start thinking about that, maybe make a list of some of those things that are really important,
Right,
that we
right.
want to make sure we get or do, or who does it. I think that's the other thing is that even knowing who does what,
Right,
who
right.
gets that, who arranges that. Is it something that, you know, the family does? Is it something that's part of what?
Well, a good thing to do is for people
arrangements?
to designate a funeral agent.
Oh, okay.
They're not your executor. They don't necessarily have to be your next of kin. It's just whoever you want to say, I want you to carry out my wishes the way I wrote them. And then that person has accepted the responsibility, and, make sure that you get what you wanted.
Okay.
Most people don't actually do that, and it just falls on the next of kin. But if you have some plans that you really want to make sure get done a certain way, designate a funeral agent, and then you don't have to worry about it.
Okay. And in our planning, what should we think about? What should we be considering?
Well, the main things are like you were saying. Do you want to be buried, cremated, or donate your body? Which isn't always that popular. But I think people need to realize, like, body donation, it goes to the state of Pennsylvania, to medical school, to be a cadaver. It goes to a good cause. There's no cost involved.
Okay.
Well, there is a slight cost with the Pennsylvania.
What about like the transportation?
They pay $100 towards transportation.
Oh, okay.
So there'll be a couple of $100 extra there, but compared to thousands of dollars for a funeral, none of that. And then the ashes get returned 2 years later.
Oh.
But they have a memorial service at the medical school, and I've heard it's very beautiful, and there's a lot of respect there. So it's just an option I like to remind people, like, don't forget about that option. And with cremation, you can have cremation with a full service and everything, or you can just have what's called a direct cremation, which is the most cost-effective, cheapest way to have body disposition. It's called direct cremation. Every funeral home has to have one price for a direct cremation. There's no service, there's no add-ons. It's basically, they take the body, it gets cremated, they give you back the ashes, and I think it usually includes some death certificates. But that's as basic as you can get. So if somebody really needs to save the most amount of money, that's what you want, a direct cremation. And another little tidbit of financial advice is, and this is how crazy the laws are, that price for a direct cremation may not actually include the cost of the cremation. Okay, so when you said mysterious, that was just like the tip of the iceberg.
I see.
Because most funeral homes outsource the cremation. Like, most funeral homes don't have their own crematory.
See.
So they have to send it out. And a lot of times, a whole bunch of funeral homes are going to the same crematory, will service an area.
Yeah.
And this is where it's funny that they will all charge different prices for the exact same service. But anyway, that's often an add-on to the crematory fee. So another question, this is like another good advice for people to remember, is whenever you're getting prices, to keep saying, are there any other costs?
Exactly.
Like, you just keep, are there any other costs? And like, just keep saying it until like they've said no like 5 times.
Because, well, that's why I said I think I need a checklist so that I can ask all those things, as far as I mentioned, all the things that you might think of that when you've attended a funeral, but you don't realize it. So you really almost need that kind of checklist to see what are the things, the announcement, the obituary in the newspaper, even that little bit, to the transportation of picking up the body and taking it to the funeral home or crematorium, wherever, are all could be additional costs or add-on costs, or part of the bigger cost that you, when you're making comparisons, you can ask that. Because some may have it as part of one item, and it could be somewhere else in another, right? Okay.
And funeral directors, they're not necessarily in the business of, like, let me educate this person. They're just setting this service. So they're not thinking like, oh, I just forgot to tell them that there's going to be 10 additional costs involved here, which is why, as a good consumer, you just want to keep on asking and asking and asking, so that you know what you're talking about.
Well, and I think, again, because we didn't plan, and so we're there, as you said, very vulnerable, trying to do something that may have not been, we never had a discussion about with the individual. So we're really looking to them to also help us with making sure it's complete, that we've taken care of everything that we think we should. And there's so many things that in planning that you want to think about. So you want to shop around, you want to plan, prices vary, get different options, We talked about not all, it doesn't have to be all at one place. It's not all or nothing. It could be kind of here and there.
And I'll just throw this out because we're trying to spread the word that in Pennsylvania, it is completely legal to have a home funeral, which really,
So tell me
it's
about
this
that.
new
wave
thing of actually just going back to the way it always was done.
Okay.
And it varies by state. But Pennsylvania, you don't need a funeral director for any aspect of a funeral. You can keep a body at home. You keep it on dry ice. You can keep the body at home for 24 hours without anything happening. So if you just want to keep a body at home just to say goodbye, so there's not an abrupt, the body being whisked away in the middle of the night, there's no need for that. No need. You got 24 hours.
Okay.
There's no laws. That body's still yours. That body's yours till it's gone.
Okay.
So you can keep a body at home. You can take it to the crematory yourself. You need a transit permit, but you can go get a transit permit.
Okay.
And granted, most people are not going to go do this.
Exactly.
But knowing
or
that
don't
it's
want
an
to do
option,
that. Yep. Okay. But
you
might
can do
want the
it.
option of home.
Do a little bit at home. You could have the viewing at home, but then end up in a funeral home. Yeah, do a little bit of both. Or if you want, I'm just sort of making this up. I want the body embalmed, but then I want to bring it home just to have it because I happen to have a beautiful backyard or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be all or nothing.
Okay.
You can sort of piece it together. And this is where you really want to call ahead and not do this at the last minute.
Absolutely.
Because you want to find a funeral director who says, sure, I will help you with that, because there are funeral directors who will help.
That will support that.
The more you don't leave it to the last minute, the better your options are for getting what you want.
And I want to ask this because I heard about this too, and I don't know if it's another new wave, but I was talking to a friend and a couple of us were talking about our options, and they mentioned about, let's see if I have this right, a green burial.
Yeah, that's another one that people don't realize.
Yeah, what is that?
It's basically all environmentally friendly. You can't be buried in a typical casket. It has to be biodegradable, so it's made out of willow or bamboo, and they're beautiful. They look like beautiful, wicker baskets. When I first saw them, I had never seen anything like them. They're beautiful. Or just a shroud. You can be buried in just a shroud. And this is where, if you start researching this online, it could be, there's beautiful white shrouds, there's tie-dye shrouds, there's striped, there's every variety of shroud you could want.
Oh my.
But nobody knows this. So then you're buried in a shallower grave, and there's no headstone. Some of these cemeteries will allow a flat rock, a flat stone.
Okay.
But I think most of them won't have anything. And they just give you a GPS coordinate.
Oh my.
Of where either the body or the ashes were, because there's both. You can have a body burial or ashes in a green cemetery. And there are not that many green cemeteries, but there's more and more all the time. There's one in Bethlehem. There's a couple in Pittsburgh. They just opened a section outside of, in Philadelphia at Laurel Hill, West Laurel Hill.
Okay.
Just opened a green burial section. So they're coming around.
Okay.
So if it's something if you've been a die-hard recycler your whole life and you want that,
into the environment, yep.
Call around, do that ahead of time so that you
that
can
is.
get that done, because you can absolutely get that.
Terrific. Wow. There's a lot of new things. So in the couple of minutes that we have, and we couldn't even get into each of the different types. We could have gone into each different type and the planning. Again, the keys is to investigate, educate, and then do some planning and write some things down. Write the plan down, because it doesn't help if you try to keep it up there. Everybody else has to help and understand what it is that you want. The last thing that sometimes can be confusing in terms of is paying for it.
Right.
When do we pay? Because I've thought about, well, if I pay now, then it won't cost me that much more in the years ahead.
Right.
Is there best time? You know, obviously death is unpredictable,
Right,
but inevitable. I don't know. What's your thoughts
The
on that?
FCA's sort of official position is that they don't recommend prepaying except in the cases of spending down for Medicaid. And then
Okay.
they say absolutely.
Use the funds then
Right.
that you have for something that is a doable expense, that's inevitable, that you need to pay.
Right.
Okay.
But if that's not the case,
Yes.
they advise pre-planning, but not putting your money with a particular nursing home. Like save the money. They don't say don't save the money. But save it in your own account. There's payable on deaths account where that money can be available as soon as you die. That money can come out. It can be earmarked for your funeral.
Oh, okay. Okay, because that can
and
also
that-
be considered part of assets
Right.
for Medicaid medical assistance. But then
Yeah.
that's probably at that time, that might be the most appropriate time for you
Right,
to look into
right.
that too. And again, that can vary also probably from age to age. Certainly if
Right,
you've
right.
reached the age of 80, it may not be that bad to begin paying on
Yeah.
some things.
Right.
So,
right.
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 So maybe not my age or immediate, but kind of look at some things and get some ideas of actually the costs.
Right,
And what I
right.
want to spend and what's important to
Right,
me
right.
if I want to put more into this and less into that,
Totally.
and what's out there in my community and options, because again, as waves come out, things may change in another
They
how
will
many
change.
years.
They will change. And
Okay.
one of the things I tell people is, the next time you go to a funeral, go and be an observer, or set aside some part of yourself to be an observer and think, what of this appeals to me? Do I not like? And then when it's fresh in your mind, go home and then start writing down. I liked this. I want this. I don't want this.
Yes.
And then you're kind of
Yes.
started and you're a little invested, and then I can't say enough about this, call around. And there's no reason to wait till you're any particular age.
Okay.
Yep. If you're on this side of 50, you're good. Pick up the phone, pick 3 funeral homes in near your house or whatever, and just start making those calls. And I feel like when you make those calls, all of a sudden it becomes real. Not in a bad way, but in
Okay.
a good way. This isn't that bad. They're just
Right.
normal people, And you like one, you don't like the other, and then all of a sudden it feels like something you care about, and then you finish your plans because you want to, and you realize it's important, and you want to get what you want, and now it's not a chore. It's more like I'm getting to
doing
I'm
this.
getting
It's
to get
the
done
control
what I
that you
want.
have, and
Right.
the decision making, the research on what it is that you actually want rather than
Right. And the peace of mind with having that done is huge.
And that's so hard because you say and you say it and believe it, and it truly is, but it's still that fine line to get us to begin to do that. I do want to make sure we have contact information displayed in case people have questions. Certainly, this is the tip of the iceberg. I'll let you give the information as to how to contact.
Anybody can call
Alliance.
the Funeral Consumers Alliance of Pennsylvania. Should I read those numbers?
Sure.
The phone number is 267-712-9695. It's actually just a message. There's
Okay.
nobody manning the phone since we're all volunteers.
Okay.
But leave a message and somebody will call you back. Our website is fcaphilly.org, and there is a wealth of information on our website.
okay.
So
Good.
if you just have questions, so much can be answered there. You can email us at fcaphilly@gmail.com. And then our national organization is funerals.org. If somebody has somebody in another state or just
Okay.
wants to see what's going on in another state, you can find out a state organization. And the national organization also has answers to all kind of questions,
Okay.
because there's questions about veterans.
Yes, we
There's
didn't
a
even
lot of
get
little
into
subsets
and
that
some of the benefits that they get that they're entitled to.
Yeah,
We didn't talk
yeah.
about all the different aspects of what arrangements need to be made internally for getting those things,
Mm-hmm.
death certificates and all of that. That's part of it as well. If we have one second,
yeah.
what would you like to quickly say? Anything important other than have a plan and
Be empowered. Don't be afraid.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll have you back again to talk about maybe some more specifics, or as the changes occur in the future, some new things. So appreciate everybody tuning in to Aging Matters, and we'll see you next month.